exclusive director of this entertainment that you guys enjoy. And here, I'm going to hit the right button here. Let's see. Let's make this one work. That's the show that I had been waiting for like 15 years to get a chance to produce. When I got the chance to be the person in charge of the X-Men, it was like, you know, a kid in a candy store. I loved it. It was the best thing ever to happen. This is actually, out of all the shows I worked on, this was the best, the X-Men. You know, it gave me a chance to be a fanboy again and mix it with being a director and try and make the show into like a living comic book for everyone. And I'm glad that you guys enjoyed everything because well, back then there was no internet, so all of us had pretty much had to fly by our own instincts and what it was like to be 9 years old again, and put what we remember, the joy and excitement we had as a kid, and put that on the screen for you guys. So, you know.
Nailed it.
Yeah, thank you. So this is the group that we came up with, as you guys already know. You know, the Gambit, Rogue, Jubilee, Wolverine, Jean Grey, Storm, and Mr. Cyclops. Some people asked me before, how come there was only so many characters? But the writers, in their wisdom, they figured out that, you know, X-Men is like huge. So they had to, we only had 24 minutes to do a good show. So we had to cull it down to just a good staff to work with. And the characters that didn't make the cut, we did individual episodes with them, like Colossus and Nightcrawler and stuff like that. But yeah, let me introduce some of the guys who helped me put this thing together. The first one is going to be Mark Lewis, who's my right-hand man. When the storyboards weren't turning out right, and I had to do little post-its with scribbles on them, this is a guy that could interpret all my little squiggly lines and turn it actually into a character, you know. And he was my living memory, because if I forgot something, I just would talk to him. It's like, there was a character in Thor called the Recorder. And that's my nickname for him, the Recorder, because he remembers everything back in those days. So, you know, Mark was very essential to what I had to do. Next one up is going to be Mr. Lane Hughley. He wrote the fantastic, you know, Nightcrawler episode that you guys all saw, and Cold Comfort, where we finally got the chance to see Mr. Iceman, and had a lot of fun with that episode. And the next one up was Mr. David Vermont. He gave me a picture, gave me the CGI thing, so I said, okay, I'll do that.
I look better in AI.
He was in charge of the Weapons X Lies and videotape, which it was a huge backstory episode, which was great to storyboard, because I had to go into my personal collection, bring the books out, and Xerox it on the Xerox machine for the storyboard guys to play with, because, you know, there was no internet, so you couldn't just like beep, 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 no. Xerox machine passed it out and everything worked. And there we go. As you can see, all the stuff he's worked on beside X-Men, that's what I was doing with everyone here, showing all their
Some other, but I'll take the credit.
Okay. Okay. The next one up is Mr. Brooks Wachell.
cocktail.
There you go. Pronunciation corrected. There you
And
go.
they got it wrong here. Which also happened to be on an X-Men title card.
And they got the credits wrong.
Yeah, they got the credits. I
Yeah.
didn't write those episodes.
That was you.
That was me.
That was you. Okay, then pilot error.
I wrote the climax to Dark Phoenix,
That's right.
Jubilee's Fairy Tale Theater, Stormfront, and I forget what else.
Yeah, that's
I sense a villain background story.
And the guy that made the typo is me. I was late last night putting all the stuff in. I'm sorry about that.
Technology is not our friend.
So those are the shows I've worked on over the years. 35 years I've worked on like 76 animated shows, but the X-Men has been the #1 show that I enjoyed the most. It was the most fun, and it was the most exhilarating to be working with great scripts. These guys provided me with great scripts to work from. And from that point forward, instead of trying to fix something, you just add to it and make it more and more exciting, make it more important to the audience to see. And I talked through my cameos here and there, but for the most part, these guys put together the foundation for an excellent episode. This next one is showing you way back before the X-Men you knew. I was one of the co-directors on Pride of the X-Men, where we tried to sell the show back in the mid-'80s. But there was only 3 networks, CBS, NBC, and ABC, so we didn't have much luck, but we tried our best. And the stylization that you can see here, when we did this show, Dave Cochran was the main artist of the books at the time. So he stylized the artwork after his artwork at the time, and also the cast that was there. So we got a little Dazzler and Kitty Pryde and stuff like that.
There wasn't Russ Heath involved in the character design on that?
Yeah, and Russ Heath did a lot of the character designs on this for all the characters you see here. Mr. World Comics, he did an excellent job of putting together this show and model sheets. See, Mr. Memory, you remember stuff. Next one up, the guys who worked with me to put together the show, we got into the business as 3 families. We have been reading and drawing comic books since we were in elementary school. And they're all 3 of us are good friends. This is Will Mineo, he's in the center. I made up a birthday card, that's the only thing I could find real quick. But that's him. And those are all some of the other stuff he did. He was my executive producer, director on the X-Men. And the following season, he moved on to become in charge of Exo Squad. And so it was really important to a lot of things we did. The next one up was my friend Rick Hobart. And Rick and Will, and with Mark, they're the ones who designed a lot of the model sheets we did.
Well, it's great, second season.
Second season. Oh, you went first? Oh, you went first season?
Yeah.
Okay, second season. See, memory, man. And so Rick and Will and I were all best friends, and we were lucky to finally get together, because Rick and I were at Marvel Productions, and Will was still over at Filmation, and we kind of lassoed him and pulled him into the production so the 3 of us could be together and work at the shows. And it worked out really well. We're still best friends right now. This was some of the voice actors from the show that will be in the new show that you guys are looking for this year at X-Men '97. Al Dodd and George and Potter and Lenore and the evil Chris Britton. You can expect to see all of them in the next iteration of the show coming this. There's been some production hiccups, but they plan on trying to get it out by October, November of this year. So you should be able to see the new ones. This is Norm Spencer, Mr. Cyclops. Unfortunately he passed away, but he was real essential to making the heart of the show. He was also the guy, when you hear the words previously on X-Men, that's him. Every you hear it, that's Cyclops giving you the intro and the recap of every episode. And the next clip I have here is John Colicos. He was the voice who was our Apocalypse. He had, oh man, he had such great style, and the pipes, he really brought Apocalypse alive. And a little sidebar is that he was also in the original Star Trek. He was actually the very first Klingon that Captain Kirk faced. It was John Colicos. That's a little sidebar about what he's done. I mean, he's done on Battlestar and some other stuff. Those are the two things I can remember. I can remember more, but that's all I can remember right now. Okay, so this here is the crew that we did. We had finally had a rap party like 10 years after the show. Something like that. We all got together and celebrated the show. And that's the entire crew. There's two people I wanted to point out that were real crucial to the creation of the show that you guys saw. And it was these two persons, Margaret Lash and Avery Colbert. These two were so important. Margaret Lash was my boss at Marvel Productions when we tried to do Pride of the X-Men. It didn't work. The zeitgeist was wrong. 6 years later, she became the CEO of Fox Kids. She called me up, Eric Lewall and other people said, she called and said, I have the power to green light shows, we're doing the X-Men. and she was excellent in putting us on the air. She also greenlit Batman, she also greenlit all the shows that you remember, the Power Rangers and all that stuff. It's because of her, because she had the green light, she had the insight the other networks didn't have, and she put us on the map. And I've already told her this, but my nickname for her, she's the secret superhero of Saturday morning, because without her, none of this would have ever happened. Now the other lady, Avery Coburn, she was like, a lot of the comedy bits have like, oh, the censor persons, broadcast standards and practices, they're evil. We got really lucky. This is like what I call lightning in a bottle. She didn't come from Saturday morning, she came from live action. And a lot of things that these guys were writing and trying to put into the show, with a different person, it would have killed it or watered it down tremendously. But because she came from live action, she was open to the stories that these guys were doing, and the stories we wanted to tell. And because she allowed it, she allowed us to push the boundaries further than most shows had been at that time. You gotta remember in 1982, a successful show was either Scooby-Doo or Super Friends. And that was what we did not want to do. And she saw what we were doing. Like, we had to negotiate a lot in the scene of Wolverine punching Cyclops in the gut. That's not what they do in Super Friends, they don't do that. But we reasoned with her and talked to her about how different people process grief differently. And we convinced her that's the way he would process it. And so we were able to do that. We had to promise, he was only going to do it once. But we got it into the system, into the show. And a lot of other things. We got this, the episode with Nightcrawler and Faith, she allowed that to get in. She was all open to it. And a lot of other combat sequences that I drew, maybe too actiony, but she allowed me to get a lot of stuff into the show. So these two ladies were real essential to the enjoyment that you guys saw. We were able to put on the air. About maybe 5 years ago, we finally met this man, Chris Claremont. And we finally got a chance to see him. The two people standing with me and him is Eric and Julia Lewall. Eric was the story editor, the showrunner for the X-Men series. And that's his wife, Julia. And she wrote, I'm probably going to get it wrong, Mr. Memory, but I think she wrote Days of Future Past, Part 1. She's the one who wrote that episode. So she got the ball rolling in the first season. And there's other one, I don't remember much, but that's the best I can do right now. And together, Eric and Julia, they got together to produce with Marvel a book on the X-Men, which is this book right here. And Eric went out and interviewed all of us about, what do you remember about this? What do you remember about that? And we just kind of like, you know, he put the tape recorder on and started talking, and he, you know, took things, he took down the best notes, and he put together a book. And I have I'm really, really bad at this. I have a storage unit, but every time we work on a show, put stuff in the box, shove it over here. And so these guys were willing to go into the storage unit and just start pulling boxes out and seeing stuff. And a lot of the stuff that was stored in my boxes ended up in the book, which is where you guys can see all the model sheets that these guys have drawn and everything. And this is the character called Morph, which you guys all know about. That he was taken from an earlier comic book about, the original name was Changing, but we mainly, that's where Morph came from. But, let's see if I can correct or do this. I want these guys to start talking about all the great episodes that they did. And since I don't have my mouse here.
Talk about the Phoenix episode.
Let me go back to, let me go up here. Sorry, you gotta bear with me, I'm not a tech guy. And let's go back here to the top. And as these guys start talking, starting with Mr. Memory. Mark, why don't you tell us more about what you did on the show?
I got hired on the second season to do character cleanup. They had just brought on Frank Bruner, some of you will recognize that name, as the model designer, primary model designer on the show. And Frank said, oh, you want me to clean everything up too? I don't have time to do that. So I got hired because of that. The funny thing is, Larry wasn't the one who hired me.
Yeah.
So my first day on the job, I got introduced to Larry by the head of the studio. Larry, here's your new character cleanup guy. He got this look that I realized right away. He'd been blindsided, but it worked out.
That's a ooh, what? In my eyes, I didn't say it out loud. I was going, what are you talking about?
Yeah. He didn't know they were hiring a character.
Yes, I did not know.
So, but yeah, no, things worked out because we quickly, Larry quickly realized it's like, oh, he knows a lot about this stuff and he's got the right spirit for what we want to do here. So, like one of the big things that Larry wanted to push for on that second season model was, excuse me, he wasn't quite getting the comic book look that he was wanting, I guess, in the first season. So he was like, really put some black shadows on those things.
Mm-hmm.
So it probably had like some of the densest models in terms of TV animation, because we had black shadows, we had color shadows, we had main colors and highlight colors all at the same time.
Yeah, it was a lot, but I wanted to make sure to achieve that as close as I could, a comic book look to the show, because I wanted this to be like a living comic book for you guys, to see it. It hadn't been done. I knew it could be done. And with Mark's help, he was able to, because the character's got to do a 360 turn, so you got to make sure the core black turns in all directions. And we had to choreograph that here before we send it overseas for them to animate and make mistakes from.
Oh, there's one other thing too that I realized earlier this month. This month marks exactly 30 years that I've been working in animation, and my first job was this show.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. Okay, let's go down to Mr. Nightcrawler. Okay.
Hi, everybody. I'm Glenn Yulee, and yes, I wrote 3 of the original X-Men series. I was fortunate enough, I had met Eric and Julia when we were all on staff at Walt Disney TV Animation. And I was there for 5.5 years, and then when that ended, Eric had already moved on to running the X-Men show. So I began working with the 4th season, I believe, 3rd or 4th season. And the first one I did was Cold Comfort, which was thanks to Larry and his team, full of superheroes, lots of superheroes. X Factor and some dwarfs, and I'm not sure who else was in there. And then I did the episode Nightcrawler, which people seem to still remember fondly. And then the follow-up on that, which was called Bloodlines, where we saw Nightcrawler meet Mom, and who happened to be Steve. So it was a wonderful experience in working with Eric, who's a terrific showrunner, and all the extraordinary work that Larry and his team did, particularly on the Nightcrawler episode, because, they all were big fans of the comic books, and I think, Larry, you probably redrew a certain number of sequences in the episode just to make it extra special. So the final product was kind of wonderful and still holds up pretty well to this day. And I have, after the X-Men experience, continued to write in animation and have worked on other shows, which you can see some of the artwork. I've worked on Static Shock, and I did the crossover episode, The Big Leagues, which was Batman and Robin and the Joker in Dakota, and American Tail and Static Shock, Ben 10. I can't remember them all now. It's too early. But stuff. Anyway, so that's how I've spent my days for the last 1,000 years. And thank you all for being here, by the way, because we wouldn't have had jobs if you didn't watch these things back then.
Yeah, I worked on a lot of your scripts on Static Shock. That was a lot of fun too.
I'm glad.
Yeah, me too.
Was it confusing having two Lens work on the same thing since Len Wein also worked on the animation?
There's no way to compare the two. Len Wein is a titan in the industry, and I'm this guy who does stuff. Len co-created Nightcrawler and Wolverine and Umdia, Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
So, and the much missed Len Wein, an extraordinary fellow, kindest man ever, and a real talent in whose work in comic books and in animation, that's legendary. And so, yes, it was nice to be the second Len.
Okay, let's go down to, wrong button. There's the button. Mr. David, talk to us.
I didn't come into to X-Men right away. I was there temping at Fox Kids during the second season, right after the first few episodes had aired. I think it was on like a special Thanksgiving. The second episode was on a special Thanksgiving. Yeah. And it was like the first time that Fox Kids like hit #1 with something, and they were just like mind blown. I wasn't there during. I wish I had been there to see Margaret like champion this thing, and then you guys designed the very first things. But the ball was already rolling when I came on board, and the network executive on the piece, Mr. Sidney Iwanter, a legendary and cantankerous figure.
Great stories.
There's the writers all love him. The artists not so much. He just had a thing about fostering young writers, and as I said, I was working there. I was temping, and a friend of mine, Stephen Melching, who I went to high school with, had also met with him a few times, and he was like, "Hey, I should write something together. Did you write anything?" I'm like, "Yeah, we've co-written stuff." And so our first script was Long Shot, but thankfully that was not the first one to air. Because it's really not as good a story. But there was a big production problem with the overseas studio. We tried out a new, you remember that. They sent this pencil test of the opening sequence with the werewolves, and I thought that looked great. And then we got the actual episode, and it was like the backgrounds, there were clouds drawn in with black markers, it was just, it was horrifying. So they wound up having to redo the whole thing. So our first episode that actually aired was Weapon X Lives in Videotape, which just happened to be at the right time when prime time was looking for something to put on Sunday. So our first episode aired in prime time, just because I was in the right place at the right time with the right episode ready, talking about having to dig out your old comic books for the research on that. Again, back in those days, very few, not much of an internet, not a lot available there. We were just scouring comic book stores all over LA, just trying to cherry pick research, and God knows how much we spent on back issues just to find all this stuff. My first gig writing X-Men, pretty freaking amazing. I just stepped in by temping somewhere. So those people trying to break into the industry. let that be a lesson to you. Since then, I went on. I was an exec at Fox Kids for a while. I took over Power Rangers, which was by that time a juggernaut, so there was no way I had any influence on that. But then I've written on a lot of stuff since then. The Guardians of the Galaxy show, and then Len and I both just recently wrote on Octonauts. So watch that on Netflix, if you will. And I recently was doing a thing at Netflix, which was really, really exciting, and then I can't say that it won't happen because they haven't announced that. But but I've had a storied career after that, so
Cool.
go on.
Thank you, David. Moving on to Brooks, and ignore my pilot error, putting up the episodes he didn't write. Brooks, can you go ahead and tell us exactly what you wrote
On X-Men,
on X-Men?
or how I got involved.
Yeah, go ahead. Go for
I had
it.
just come off a prime time show called The Legend of Prince Valiant, and I'd heard that the X-Men were doing the X-Men, and I was a huge fan. I had the comics, and I told my agent, and she was my agent, by the way, since 1988, and she just recently passed away last week. But she was my agent for most of my career, and I told her, and it was Barbara, I said, I want to get on the X-Men. No matter what you do, I want to get on the X-Men. She said, what you're going to have, I know what they pay, you're going to have to take a pay cut. I don't care. I want to get on the X-Men. So she called me back and said, Brooks, I had to walk naked in the park, but I got you. So I interviewed with the Lee Walls, and then that was not the end of it. Before me was the ominous meeting with the famous, you just heard, Sid Iwata. What an adventure that was. Though he has become a lifelong friend.
Yeah.
So I got on the X-Men. And I remember a dream come true. And working with people that I didn't know I'd be working with for the next 20 years. On show after show after show after show. And I remember we were having a meeting and they were doing Dark Phoenix, which was a comic book I loved. And I said, well, we're going to do Dark Phoenix. Before anyone could say anything, I went, I want part 4. Okay. And because I love that, and of course we had cast changes, and there's a lot of changes you have to make from one medium to another. And also in the comic book, Jean Grey dies, and she stays dead for a long time, and that wouldn't work for the continuity of our series, so I had to find a way to bring her back. And my script came in long, but thanks to geniuses like Larry, who knows how to direct and overlap and bend and twist. Got almost all of it in there.
Yeah, a lot of directing tricks, but yeah, I tried to preserve all the writing these guys did into the show.
All the overwriting.
All the
And I teach a writing class at UCLA, and Dark Phoenix is one of the samples I used, but before I gave my students the samples, I kind of cut it down.
Do as I say, not as I do.
But I also love that there's a scene where they're in a Laundra spaceship and it hangs over this gallery.
Right.
And if you've got sharp eyes, there's all these other great Marvel characters stuck in the gallery. So it's really that this was fanboy for all of us. And then I did other episodes. The one that was contentious was Jubilee's Fairy Tales Theater. Eric Lewald was going to write that. He got stuck and said, can you write it? And there was Jubilee's Fairy Tale Theater was the comic book.
Right.
Came up with this original story that I found out fans either really adore the episode or they despise it. And I think we had also switched studios for that episode.
Yes, you did.
It came back looking...
Less than it used to.
Thank you
I'll
very
put it
much.
that way.
That was much more tactful. But also the fun part was Sydney told me they originally were playing with these, not Jubilee,
What?
the character, not Jubilee. Jubilee. She's much older in this episode. She's a superheroine.
Oh, yeah.
So they had all of these really sexy drawings of her that the artist went to town on.
Right, yeah.
That didn't make it into the show. But I had a lot of fun on the X-Men. I ended up working on all these other Marvel shows. I mean, Marvel Dash Men, Silver Surfer, Spider-Man, Iron Man, Avengers.
Mm-hmm.
Static Shock for DC.
Yes.
And other shows like Clifford the Big Red Dog. I also worked in documentaries. I co-created a hit show for the History Channel called Dog Fights, not about irritatable poodles, but very
Brilliant show.
And thank you very much.
Love that show.
And now I'm retired and doing novels. I have one out about a Lady Sherlock Holmes called Lady Sherlock's Circle of the Living Dead, and a new one's coming out. So, A Circle of the Smiling Dead. I'm sorry, I moved my own title. That's what I've done. I wrote about 120 animated shows and retired a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Oh, there it is. Okay, and back to me again. As you can see there, I worked in the business for about 30, because I retired back in 2015. And in that career, I worked on like 76 different animated series, either as a director, producer, or just as another storyboard artist. And then almost all of the action adventure shows in the 80s and 90s, I got the opportunity to be in charge of work with them. It was tons of fun. I mean, that was a great 2 decades of work that I had. And it was the most fun I had in my career, was working 80s and 90s. It was like, now you look back and it's like, man, those were some good days. But it was like hard work, you know? Oh, man. Some of you guys may not know some shows, like, it's really old, like Mighty Warbot, Finding Six, Will's Exo Squad. But just so you know, when I did the first 4 years of the X-Men. The 5th year, Marvel hired me away to do the 2nd season of the Fantastic Four. And so, which was another Marvel show, you know, that I enjoyed, you know. And I told him, I gave him 3 things that okay, wanted to move, okay, I'm gonna do the 3 things I asked for. It's like, I want to do the classic stories, you know, stories within the first 100 issues. That was done. The second one was I needed more money. And the third was, leave me alone. And they agreed to it, and that's when I moved over from X-Men to Fantastic Four. My assistant director, Frank Squilacci, took over the 5th season of the X-Men. So that's actually what happened back then.
Frank was a great guy to work with.
Yes, Frank took over, because he had been with me from the beginning, so I knew it was in good hands, you know, in leaving him. You know,
Frank was like the first guy I met my first day on the job.
yeah, oh yeah, okay. You know, and he knew all the X-Men lore, Marvel lore, just like all of us. And so that was one of the best things about the series, is that everybody was into Marvel, was into all the characters, and they all enjoyed working on the show and putting their 2 cents in wherever they could to make the show, you know, fun. That's a really a quality. It's very hard to explain to an executive. You know, it's going to be fun. You know, they don't get it.
We always kind of thought, you guys get to make the money, but at least we get to have the fun.
Yes, at least, yes. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, because Lord knows we didn't get to make the money.
No, we missed on that pot of gold. Oh man. So let's see, what's the next? I have no idea what the next one is. Oh, I'm button here. Oh, this is all the stuff I already talked about myself. I'm Will Minio, Rick Holberg, the voice actors, Norman Spencer, John Kalikos, the X-Men crew, and the 2 key ladies in charge of the entire show. One thing about Margaret that I just remembered. It wasn't until about 10 years ago when Margaret posted on Facebook, I think, or something, that when she greenlit the show, even her boss wasn't sure that X-Men should be on the air because he didn't understand it. But she said she felt strongly about it, that it's going to be a show that's going to be a hit. So her boss said, if that's what you believe in, that's fine. But if the show dies, that's going to be your job. We did not know that. And she really believed in the show that much, starting from the Pride of the X-Men to the X-Men show that you guys saw. She really felt this is a show that needs to be on the air. So that was a little tidbit that she gave us late, way before the show got she told us that.
Yeah, I think the Lee ones put that in the book too.
Did they?
Yes.
Okay, when they interviewed her, yeah, because it was a surprise to me between her and Sydney.
Yeah.
Maybe Sydney knew it. I didn't know. It was like revelation. You know. Let's see. You have the right arrow here. Claremont, the book. Morph. Oh, this is the other series I worked on, which was related to Marvel Fantastic Four. Mark helped me on this series.
Yeah, freelanced.
He freelanced some story model designs for me, and I paid for it out of my own pocket, but I got John Buscema to do all the model sheets on the characters. So
Did you keep those?
yes, I did. I made sure to pay for them out of my own paycheck, just so I could own them. Yes.
Where's the storage unit located?
Yeah, you got to do like the main head turns, which I got to clean up.
Yeah.
And they were all lined up on one sheet of comic paper.
Yeah, and for John, I mean, he thought it was quite boring. I said, "Don't worry, I love it." You know, because he used to doing the dynamic poses. You know, I wanted his look to be the show.
Yeah.
And yeah, so he had been at Marvel earlier, maybe about, oh my God, I don't know the exact time, but he had been there filming How to Draw Marvel the Marvel Way.
Right.
And then he was there for Spider-Man's Amazing Friends. He did the model sheets for about 2 episodes and went to Toy. And so this is way before your time, but that's when I got to know him. We got to take him out to lunch, myself, Will, and Rick. You know, fanboys. Here, whatever you want, we'll pay it. Take out to lunch the whole week almost. But anyway, I got a chance to get this guy involved, Mark Hamill. He became our Maximus in the show. You know, that's back when it had hair. It's all gone. Yeah, no hair. Yeah. You got a good set of hair. All you guys got hair except for David. You like me.
Usually I shave it off so you can't tell, but no, it's going.
It's gone.
It's just one of three.
There's a dial in my back. It gets longer.
Oh, I like that. Let's see. Okay, and some of the actors who I got to work on the show might recognize some of them. In the back is Worf, which is Michael Dorn. Kathy Ireland was Crystal.
Oh, yeah, I got to design that model.
Yeah. The guy on the far right, that's Reed Richards with all the long hair. Believe it or not. And the guy right next to me, that's the actor who played Johnny Starr. The guy right behind me was, let's see if I can read this right, Chuck McCain. He was the thing. And the guy next to him is the writer of everything, and Glenn Leopold, there it is. Yeah. Oh, and the lady next to Clint is Sue Richards. The black lady right there, she was Medusa, and Clyde was Karnak. And way in the back next to Michael Dorn is Tom Teeth. He was the supervising producer. So that was my set. That's when I left the X-Men to work on this show. So I thought I'd show you a little bit of that other show.
What lured you away?
Huh? Yeah,
What
the one that lured me
lured
away. Yeah. Leave me alone, you know. The classic stories, and I wanted to add my little cameos here and there, and it worked.
They even let you totally redo the title sequence.
Yes,
of the show, too.
brand new. Yeah, we didn't want to use. Oh God, I didn't want to use that first season. So we did
The disco version.
Oh yeah.
Space Adventure?
Oh, yeah. It was awful. When I was, I just remember seeing something in that first season of Namor fighting Human Torch underwater, and they're just fighting. It's like then you pull back and you're on like a talk show. It's like
Yeah, but Dick Clark, because the kids are all into Dick Clark.
this is stupid. Anyway, we did none of that. We went back to the classic episodes and try and make it like the X-Men, and try to do something that was good. These are some of the cameos that slipped in there. You know, Hercules, She-Hulk, Namor, Namorita, Cap, and She-Hulk, some of the new Warriors. I didn't put them all in, but I got a couple that I found online. And in the X-Men, here's some of the cameos I was able to slip into the show. First season, I tried to do Spider-Man as like a background cameo. They turned me down. So when we did the Phoenix and all hell was breaking loose, I said, I'm going to show the shadow of this character land on this chimney and see this hand come out and go, and shoot out some webbing. And it's called a mutant hand. That's all it's called. And I said, yes. I got him into the series. You know? A lot of times, because the first time I called him Spider-Man, and they said no. So this one, all you had to do is put mute in front of anything, and he got it. Because I did the Black Panther over here on the right, and his official name is African Mutant Number 3.
Legal thing, like later after you left,
Yeah.
we had a thing, Frank and I did a thing where we had a Danger Room robot that looked like the Hulk, only we didn't put Danger Room robot looking like Hulk on the model sheet, we put Danger Room robot as large green Neanderthal creature.
Yes.
Now, legal didn't know what that meant, but the fans did.
Yeah, that's the tricks we had to use to get the cameos that you guys saw and would enjoy.
Probably couldn't do that now.
Oh no! I mean, I'm talking with people who are doing X-Men '97 right now.
Yeah.
And they, the director said, "Man, you box us into a corner." Everything they do is being reviewed with a microscope. You know. So when I was able to get away with back in the day.
We used to get the storyboards in, because I was there in the office, and I get to see the storyboards for any of you guys got to see the episodes. And I flipped through and I'm like, oh my God, look at that, Black Panther's in there. Dude, look at this, it's Sunfire, check that out. They didn't have any bugs or anything in the office. So, yeah, it was so cool.
Yeah, it was
Easter eggs, man, all over.
Yes.
It was so cool, working on a show you're a fan of, with people that are a fan of that show.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't get that often.
Yeah, it was fun to, also, I remember as a kid, it shows my age, it was like back in the 60s, I was reading a book, Spider-Man, and in one panel you see Thor go through. And he's saying, hey, watch where you're throwing that thing, okay? But as a kid back then, it was like, oh my God, Thor's and Spidey, it's the same world, it's connected. It was like so much fun. It was only one panel. And so when I got a chance to do the show, I knew if I could duplicate that type of fun in the show, that's what I would add to the X-Men. But my own personal caveat that I went by was that I would add cameos only if it didn't interfere with their original stories, so that it didn't distract from it. It was just something in the background. You know, like there's a pan shot of, I think it's in Nightcrawler, where they're in a chalet, and the camera pans from left to right. And if you look carefully, it's Mary Jane, it's Dr. Strange and Clea. I don't know if there's another one, but basically you see them in their winter outfits, but if you look at them, it's like there's enough things there you can recognize. But that's the kind of thing you add it, and if you knew it, you spotted it. If you didn't, it didn't hurt your story at all. So that was my own criteria, how I added cameos that you guys would enjoy. Let's see. Before I get, this one's, gee, that's right. That image on the left was my bucket list. In 60 years, I had never been published by Marvel Comics. And after, I think last year, they called me up because I had made to be a consultant on the 97 series. They called me and said, do you want to do a variant cover? I went, oh yes. So I asked them, what do you want me to draw? I said, draw the characters in their original outfits from the show. And so I got a chance to draw that. Sent Rick Holberg inked it. They got one of their professional colorists to do it. And boom, I finally got published by Marvel after 60 years. and then then they asked me to do a second one for Wolverine. So I did the sequence where Wolverine's fighting the Sentinels in the cave. You know, and that's where that one came from. But the first one, that was the one I was like, yes, I made it. I'm an artist. Okay, we got 15 minutes left. I'm gonna just show this one. I had lots of them, but I only have one I have the sequence here, if it lets me do it. I had the script had Wolverine fighting the evil Xavier, and it was storyboarded not good, and I didn't like the idea of Wolverine cutting the third rail because it would kill him. So I came up with this entire sequence in my head, and it was writing itself. I had no idea where I was going to go with it. And I'm drawing on posters and scribbling stuff and handing it off to Mark over here. I said, clean this up, man. I gotta get this thing done because I was on a deadline. And it just literally wrote itself, and Mark inked it all like a comic book, and it came together. And so let me show it to you right now if I can get this thing to work. Where's the, there it is. There's the start. So I want to show you something that I created from nothing that was in the show.
What's going on here? Causing trouble. You never follow orders. It was a mistake to save you. I'm sick of your selfish, undisciplined arrogance. I hate to find you right now either, Professor. Next time, I'll walk.
There's been other episodes, but this is the one I thought, since Mark helped me out quite a bit on this thing, to make that sequence work, it was like, that was a lot of fun. Fun, a lot of work. I was like, I got it done, get it done by Friday, and I was drawing, trying to get it all done. Okay, looks like we have about 10 to 12 minutes left. I guess I was going to open up for Q&A for people that have questions. This one, Rogue.
So a lot of two different live action movies have been made and failed really bad at telling the story of the Dark Phoenix. Why is it that you, what was the magic? Why is it that you guys, I feel like the only successful iteration of that story in film and television has been the animated series? What was the secret?
I think one of the things we had going for us, like when we did the Phoenix and Dark Phoenix, when you add it up, we had 9.5 hours to tell that story. And so the writers had time to do, a 5-episode arc showing Jean getting the power and showing the good Phoenix, and then we had another 4 to show the corruption of Jean for that. And so I think that's one of the problems with the live action is that they tried to do one movie, and okay, she's bad and she was good, you have no point of reference. Whereas these guys had a chance to take the story, build on the character, showing how good she is and how her struggle with the power, and then the corruption that happens afterwards. I think that's one of the reasons it worked well, and the skill of these writers, they were able to adapt the stories that were like, I don't know, about 10 issues, and compress it down to like 20-minute shows that where we build on it, and we had time to make things work.
I think also because we actually did the story, where the movie adaptations have been only tangentially related to the actual source material, where we actually tried to maintain as much fidelity as we could. I mean, yes, I know I had to make changes, we had a different cast, different ending, but wherever I could bring the comic book material into the script, I went right for it. And it is a lot of backstory. When I tell my class, setting up that last episode, giving them all that backstory takes almost as long as showing them the episode. So, trying to put that into a movie, I was hoping that the movies would, do the Phoenix as one entire feature-length film, and the Dark Phoenix as a part of
So they should.
Not the way they went. I don't think the movies had anywhere near the scope or the drama and some of the changes they made to some of the characters. The way they treated Rogue, since they didn't have the Miss Marvel backstory, was, I thought, a pale imitation of the Rogue that we had in the series.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that you guys also just like write better women and respect, like you guys allow women to actually be powerful, whereas I feel like a lot of times in a lot of movies, unfortunately, they have not allowed women to like truly like take up the scene and like be as powerful as they actually are.
The most powerful characters in the X-Men were the X-Men.
Yes.
Here's my book, Lady Sherlock, Virgo the Smiling Dead, Hitch. A very strong female character in 1906, a very chauvinistic age. So I love writing strong female characters because I write what I know.
Yeah. Okay. I've been told that this is probably unfortunately the last question, but if you go over to inside of the downstairs, if you look for pillar B12, that's where I got my table set up, and I found a table for these guys that they can sit at, and you can ask them more questions and get autographs and stuff. So there's a signing table for you guys.
Oh, okay.
The answer is yes.
So thank you guys for attending the show. We're